So yes, my name is Jafet for those of you who do not know, and I am in accounting, and this is why I'm here to present about accounting and to kind of shed some light on what an accountant is. So let's first start with the question of what is an accountant, because most people have a general idea of what an accountant is, but most of them are not really don't really know. So what is an accountant? So a lot of the times most people think that an accountant is someone who was good in math in high school, and that's all they did. They love calculating, they love to they like math, and that's it. But the thing is, the answer is no, as it's clearly just popped out right there. And the reason being is that a lot of my teachers and even my boss, actually, when they were in high school, or yeah, when they were in high school, they hated math. They didn't like math, right? Math is something that has a lot of calculations. Yes, it's not something that we do a lot. We don't do a lot of formulas or geometry or whatever we learn in high school about math, right? But we still use math in our lives. In the case of math operations, we still use additions, subtractions, multiplications, and divisions because we do still work with numbers. So that's the stuff that we need to use. You're gonna have to hold on. Wait for me to the queue because that's going a little too fast. Sorry, we didn't have time to practice. But yeah, so it's not that we use functions. I want to dispel that notion that you have to be good in math to be able to be a good accountant, right? Because it's not. If you want to be able to be good in calculations and using the formulas and calculating the functions and using a lot of algebra, you're going to go to engineering, architectural, and all that stuff. Because that's when you actually have to use those calculations. For us as accountants, we don't use that. The aspect of math that we use other than its operations, and note the next slide, is the concept of balancing. Right? This is a very important concept, and I want you to understand this. What I mean by balancing is that if you look at the equal sign, think of that as uh, a weigh scale. Right? On one side you have the left side, and then on the other side you have the right side, and that has to balance. Both sides has to balance, and that's actually a quite important notion in accounting, because if on one side 1 plus 1, on the other side that equals 2. If you do one thing on one side, it has to affect the other side. So if I remove 1 from the left side, so it just become 1, the other side also has to change to 1 if I add in all that stuff. That is very important, even in other areas, maybe like chemistry, because you can't just remove something and hope that it works. You have to understand that every action that you do will have a consequence, right? And the other aspect of math that we use quite often, yeah, second part is analyzation. It's the ability to be a critical thinker, to be a problem solver. What do I mean by this? Just going back to our example, it's almost the same example, but you can see there's that missing piece, right? So the analyzation portion of math is that technically that should be 1, right? 1 plus something equals 2. So what is that something? It's 1. Why is that an important concept? Because what would happen if someone wrote 3 or any number but 1, right? In my line of work, when something like that happens, if a client, let's say, did that, I would have to question them. I'd be like, why did you do that? Because in the law of math, it should be 1, but why did you write 3? Why do I have to say that? Is because there is maybe an opportunity. I have to analyze the fact that there may be a rule that I don't know of that they know of. So there may be a chance that what they wrote was actually true, right? Accountants are not all knowing, so we have to understand why sometimes people do what they do. That's the way we learn as well. You don't learn as soon as you get out of school. We don't know everything by heart. We don't know everything about accountancy as soon as I finish school or my CPA. No, that's not, we're not that thing. There's so much that you learn. So that's why it's important to be able to analyze something. And in the end, after they talk, you have to explain why it's wrong, or maybe accept the fact that it's right, and then make a recommendation. That's the part of analyzation, and that's the part of problem solving in math that you can take. Whether you're going to be in accountancy or anything else, analyzation and critical thinking and problem solving is the best thing you can take out of math. And that is something that will be needed in accountancy. So if you're not too keen on that, maybe accountancy is not great for you. So an accountant is not someone who is really good in math in high school. Another myth that most people think is that an accountant is someone who does taxes, right? Someone who does personal taxes. What are taxes, right? For all of you who are not 18 yet, you don't have to worry. You have to be once you're 18, you're gonna have to start filing taxes. And usually people think that you have to be an accountant to do taxes. They're gonna go to accountant, you have to do so that they can do your taxes. But in reality, it's, an accountant is not really just someone who does taxes, right? And the truth is, you don't have to be an accountant to do your own tax. You don't have to be a designated, you don't have to be a CPA. Anybody can learn how to do personal taxes. There's actually isn't part of a course right now that teaches a bit of what personal taxes are, right? Because you're going to eventually have to deal with them. You don't have to be. But you will want an accountant. You will want an accountant when you're dealing with more complex stuff about your personal tax. And a lot of people don't really need to, but the reason why you want to pay an accountant, why you want to go to an accountant, is that when the CRA comes knocking at your door, you might not know what they're asking or what they're telling you, right? If in your personal taxes they start asking questions that where did you take this thing, where did you take that thing, you might not know how to answer it. And that's why you need the accountant, because we as accountants have experience in all of these things. We still do personal taxes, but it's not all that we do, right? Yeah, if you just click, if just one more click, right? So as accountants, we deal with a lot of the stuff that you might not necessarily know about, such things as salary versus dividends and capital gains. And if that sounds confusing to you, trust me, it gets worse. There's a lot more stuff about taxes that even I don't know of. As accountants, as when you finish the CPA program, you're meant to know up to a certain level, enough to do personal taxes for people and even corporate taxes for people, right? Now, I'm not going to explain what the salary and dividends are and capital gains, but eventually if this ever pops out in your salary and you want to know what it is, you can come and ask. But it just takes too long to explain what they mean. But just I want you to know that an accountant is not someone that just does your taxes. It's just a tax is just one of the things that we do for our client, because you want to keep them, so you want to do a full service. Sometimes you have to deal with them in one way, so you have to help them do their taxes because that's extra income for us, right? So begs the question: what is an accountant, right? And the answer to that is it depends. It depends on what type of accountant you are. When you go to the CPA program, there are four different types, four different fields that you can go to in accounting. One is tax, one is performance management, the other one is audit, and finally there's finance. And depending on the field, just like in doctorate, depending on the specialization that you take, you do different things. So I'll just explain to you briefly kind of what it is. So let's start with tax. So tax. As I said, we've talked about this. You don't just deal with personal tax, but your main goal is to defer, reduce, or eliminate tax, if possible, in accordance to the law. I have to say, well, with CRA, I have to say that because there can be pretty shady things that you can do for your clients so that they don't have to pay taxes at all. But if the CRA catches it, you're in trouble, right? So what do we do as tax accountants? For those that go to in tax accountants, your goal is try to minimize the amount of tax that your customer or the company has to pay to the CRA. There's also the word defer. What does that mean? Defer means that you're not going to pay now, but you'll pay it in the future. And that's quite important because when you analyze how much money they're going to make now and how much they're expected to make in the future, it might be better to pay it in the future. Now, these tax accountants, they are going to be your best friends when it comes to dealing with the CRA, right? But understand also that not everyone can be, like not everyone, has that opportunity to save, to not pay the tax now. This is really more for people who are really high up in their income. They have businesses, they have stuff like that. They have options on what they can do with their money. For the most of us who are just employees, it's a little harder to save money, but we still can by telling you and asking you what sort of stuff that you paid for and about tax credits and all that. So that is what we tax the tax what because when I say we as tax accountants, like I said, when we finish my CPO program, we have a decent amount of knowledge to help out the general population. Now, if you really want to be a tax accountant, that would take a couple more years, and you're an expert, and at that point, you're dealing with complex, you're dealing with people who are probably doing millions of dollars a year. So that's what it is. So next slide. Oh yeah, caution, yeah. Performance management. So they have different titles. They're not called performance management accountants. They're called controllers or project managers, etc., and stuff like that. Because what it is that you're usually the head of the accounting or part of the accounting team in a company, right? So what your main goal is in this one is that to make sure that the company is meeting the goals, and you are basically, we call it bookkeeping, but you have to be able to, uh, you have to record, I would say, record all what the company is kind of doing. Why is that important? Well, it's important so that you are able, if a company owner asks, okay, how is the company doing? You have to be able to tell the story of the company, right? And you have to be able to explain why sometimes it's not going the way you want it to go or the way it was supposed to go. So a clear example is that if there was something, if they were expecting to make, let's say, $100,000 in a month, but they wind up making only 50. Well, why is that? Well, you as an accountant, you're part of that team where you're gonna have to explain. And you'll be like, well, the reason we didn't make 100 and we only made 50 is because we lost a contract. We lost a big contract that we were hoping for, right? So you're part of that. That's your main goal because you're the record keeper of the company in terms of all the cash. And so you have to know really well the company, how the operations. Sometimes losing a key employee, you lose a lot of revenue because you just lost that person. You have to be able to know that. And that's what a controller is or a project manager. Because if what was it again? If the employees are the backbone of the company and the heart and soul are the owners, I would like to say, and don't quote me on this, that the accountants are the brains. Not I'm saying that not everybody else thinks, but you're the one who has to recollect everything. You have to think, you have to look. You might not deal directly with the clients, but you have to know what's going on, right? The owners sometimes have no idea. All they think of is the operations. You're the one who has to kind of tell them what's happening that they don't see, right? Yes, so you need to have a deep understanding of the company and its operations. So next slide. Auditors, and this is the auditors, so they're basically investigators. We are investigators, because I am an auditor actually, but we are investigators. So what we do as investigators is because for the people that are the controller who are the performance management, they record what the company is doing. Now sometimes banks, like especially if a company has a loan, they will ask basically for the records of the company. Now the problem is if they just take it from the company itself, the company could have been making, they could have been writing whatever they want. So there's no, like, it's pretty hard for them to trust those numbers because it came from the company that they're lending to. So they hire, well, not us, but the company. So they always ask for the bank may ask the company to have their records audited, and that's where we come in. We're basically a third party, so someone that's not related to the company, and we come in and look at the books, look at what the performance, the controller did, what they wrote, and we have to investigate. We have to start looking. So if let's say the controller put some sort of transactions, sometimes we have to look at that transactions to make sure that it's right, that the amount is right, that it's actually a revenue and all that. We are the investigators so that we can tell the bank or whoever wants to look at the record and we can say, yes, effectively what they wrote down is correct. And sometimes we can say, we don't think it's correct. And that will affect the company because they might lose the loan. So that's one example. So we are basically the investigators. And we give an opinion. That's what we call an opinion. It just merely says if what they wrote is correct or not. Right? So this is a very investigative work, and it requires a lot of, again, analyzation, because in one way or another, we also have to understand the company. But we're not part of that company. So what it is that we do it for that one company, and then you work on another company and you have to understand that company. So you have a lot of clients and you're not stuck with one company. You're looking at multiple companies, right? And then finally, finance. Financial accounting. What's their main goal? I don't really know this one. It's a part that I don't have a lot of experience in. I know they just deal with cash flows, capital budgeting, time value of money, and all that stuff. And if that sounds complicated, it a little bit is. But they deal mostly with, how would I say this, the cash of a company. So if a big company wanted to purchase something, or they're trying to get an investment, they would call these financial accountants to be able to calculate how much money they would need, how much money they might be able to get out of it, and if it's if the investment is worth it, right? So these guys are the ones who's going to do a lot of calculations. This is more, if you like math and you like accounting, this is probably where you're going to be headed. But it is a very hard field to get into, because you have to be able to calculate properly, because even one decimal will affect the results. And if you tell a client that, yeah, you go for it and you'll make this much, and then they didn't make that much, you're pretty much in trouble. So that's what they do. So they deal a lot with like loans and the cash of giving advices and all that for a company of sorts, right? So out of all of that, for me, what do I do? Next slide. Yeah, the next one. What I do, I basically work at a small accounting firm called Bergeron & Co., found in Bonnie Doon. Not a lot of you people know where Bonnie Doon is. I didn't even know about it until I started working there. But because we're such a small accounting firm, we basically do a little bit of everything. Because we have such a lot of clientele, sometimes a lot of the times I'm an auditor. I audit them. But sometimes also I have to do their taxes. Sometimes I have to explain to them also what are their options if they're trying to buy a car, or if they're able to buy a car, and I have to explain all that. And as an auditor, it's actually pretty hard, especially in our case, because sometimes our clients just don't understand the accounting principle. Many times I would have a client and he would say like, why am I paying so much taxes? And I'd be like, you made too much money. If you pay a lot of money, if you get a lot of money, you're gonna pay taxes. And then he says, well, what can I do to reduce my taxes? In your case, nothing much. But if you want to pay me more, we can deduct that out of your income, and that can help you, right? That's the joke that our founder uses. Like, if people complain that they have to pay taxes because they made too much money, you want to pay me more or you want to pay the CRA? You choose. Either way, you're gonna pay somebody, right? A lot of people just think that they can make a lot of money here in Canada, but and then not pay taxes. That's totally the opposite, right? So I'll move on to the next slide. So my typical workplace and my work day, actually. The first thing is you have to know is office and computer. I am an office worker. I look at a computer all day. So you need to be proficient. I need to know how to use a computer. If you have trouble starting or opening a computer, I don't think you can join accounting, because we're so heavily dependent on technology as accountants now. If this was like 30 years back, you might be able to, because everything was on paper. But now everything is so technologically needed that you need to be able to work at least with a computer, right? And unfortunately, that's the case. And as technology comes and goes, so is accounting going to be changed by it as well. Because it used to be that as accountants, when they were doing everything by paper, by the time they were done an audit, they might have a stack of paper that are like this high that they have to, keep, because that's all their working papers. Now we just have to make sure that it's saved in the computer, right? So you have to be able to be proficient in computer. I'm not saying that you have to be a genius at it, that you know how to code. No, but you have to be able to use things like Word, Excel, and some other stuff like that, right? And you're not the type of person that be like, I clicked on something. What happened? Where's the window? You have to be decent enough that you're not gonna annoy your boss into thinking that you have no idea what a computer is, right? So, although I say that I work in an office and I go to an office and I'm in front of a computer, one of the things is again the analysis portion, because I'm not just looking in the computer, I'm not just watching a video and eating popcorn. A lot of the times I'm opening one window, one file after another, and I'm trying to make sense out of all that. So there is a lot of critical thinking that is needed in there, right? And the second portion of my job is communication and teamwork. I guess I should have put teamwork there. You need to be able to talk. As much of as an office worker that I am, and I try not to talk to people, I just want to do my work, I still have to be able to communicate. I still have to be able to tell the client what I did. I still have to be able to talk to my boss, right? And that's important because, like I said, as an accountant, you have all these expertise. So for you, it makes sense. But then when you're explaining to the clients, for them, it doesn't make sense. And that's where you as an accountant need to have the ability to communicate. Because if you can't explain to them what you did, they might think you're, well, just an idiot or you're messing with them, right? You have to translate your accounting knowledge into the general knowledge, and that's harder than you think, right? Imagine a doctor telling you what's wrong with you, but they're only using their words, like I don't know, tell me some doctor terms. I haven't searched it up, but it's the same concept. If I go to the doctor and I'm like, doctor, what's wrong with me? Well, you have some sort of black spot in here, and they use complicated words. I'm just gonna be like, what does that mean, right? They have to be able to translate what that black thing is. If it's a tumor or if it's something, the client has to know. So that's why that's my regular work day, is that I have to be able to communicate with them. Otherwise, we're not going to get anywhere, right? And if I don't talk to my boss, which is quite scary sometimes, well, they're not in the loop of what I've done, and it makes the file go longer. Next slide. So here's the things that I love about my workplace. Number one, it's office work. These hands did not do a lot of labor work. As my mom would always tell me, they're quite girly. They're not dry, but they're not cracked either. They don't have a lot of callus. I love that about my work because I know that at the end of the day, I'm not going to get injured. Right? There's a very low chance that I'll get injured. Considering that I also faint at the sight of my own blood, that's a pretty good thing, right? So that's office work. Office work is not that hard physically. However, one thing I don't like about it also is that it's also office work. Understand that as an office worker, I sit a lot. I sit a lot in front of a computer, and that's not very good for you. If you've sat a lot in high school, you'll do more as an accountant because you're sitting in front of a computer, you're typing stuff up. That brings problems to your lower back. And for me, it also develops bad habits. Sometimes, as stressed as I am, I eat a lot and I don't work out a lot. So that brings problems physically as well to your back, and I get headaches. And the thing is, it's like I'm not physically exhausted, but I am mentally tired, right? But anyways, the things other stuff that I love about it is also the fact, again, the analyzation and the challenge that comes with it. Because I am an auditor, I don't always deal with the same client. I deal with multiple clients. So it's different situations for them. It's a different situation for this one. Or it could be the same situation, but it's not giving me the same results. So I have to think. It challenges me to think. It's not very, like, although my work is routine, the stuff I have to analyze is not routine. So you're always thinking. Your mind is always doing something. And if it's not, then you're probably too tired because you're overthinking. Right? That challenge is because you're gonna continue to learn more and more as you meet more and more clients. Like I said, when I finished my CPA, it doesn't mean that I knew everything. Completely not. But yeah, so that's the part that I love. The things that I don't like so much is the fact that it's a long days. What does that mean is that although I'm not a night shift worker, that's one thing I love. I'm a day worker. Sometimes you have to work 12 hours. Sometimes you have to work 11 to 12 hours a day. Because the part of my job is the fact that you just have to finish the file. We are professionals. And what I mean by that is that there's a difference between a professional worker and someone on the regular wage force. In the regular wage people, they leave 9 to 5. After 5 o'clock, they can go home. As a professional, you could be at home and you're still thinking about the problem. That's the difference. That's why professionals can, like lawyers, they can bill you for something they were thinking at home, right? So what does that also mean? It means that it's up to us, it's up to me to finish my work. So if that takes more hours at work, I have to stay at work. If I have to go on a Saturday, then I'll go on a Saturday, right? It's up to me. And sometimes I don't like that. I like having a 9 to 5, but when the work requires it, you have to do it. And that also means that, during busy season, there's a lot of pressures because you have to meet deadlines. And sometimes I'm juggling 2-3 clients. I have to do something for 2-3 clients every day. That's mentally exhausting. And by the time I'm done, I'm done work, I get out, I don't feel tired physically, but I have a headache and I just can't I can't enjoy anything because I'm mentally exhausted. I just want to go to sleep, right? So that's the thing. Next slide. So for any of you who are interested, I guess that's a little too small. Can you guys read that? Yeah, maybe. But the timeline, if you want to be an accountant. So first, you have to finish your high school. This is the regular timeline, right? You have to finish your high school. You have to go to university to get your bachelor's and major in accounting. That takes 4 years. And then get into the CPA program, which is about 2.5 years. Now, I say this is the regular because I took longer than this. I finished high school in 12 years. That's not the problem. But for my university, it took me about 6 years actually, because I didn't know how to plan my courses and I got delayed in some areas and this and that. And it took me 6 years. But my CPA program, it took me 2.5. And that's just the normal route. There's also other ways you can get, because the final thing that's important is to get into the CPA program. That's the last part that you really have to do. And sometimes you don't necessarily have to go to university. You don't have to take 4 years of university. There are ways that you can go around it. But in the end, you're going to be taking the same courses you've done in university. So that's why that's the normal route, right? So usually you can become a CPA in a matter, if you went straight, just regular, at the age of 24, 23, 24, kind of a thing. You can also rush it if you want. You don't have to take necessarily 4 years in university. You can go to school for 3 years straight without taking any vacations, and you'd be able to get to the CPA program a lot earlier, right? Next. So, salaries. So my salary as auditor is around in the $50,000. That's kind of like where you're at as an auditor. And then when you're specialized, so when you're in a performance management or a tax accountant or your finance, I would say it's about 80 minimum. Now, the reason it's different and why it's like that is because the normal route to get to CPA is you have to work as an auditor first, right? Because you have to work as an auditor, a lot more people are going there. So what does that mean? It means that as the employer, they have the right to lower the wage because they know that many people will come. when there's too much supply of workers, the salary goes down. So the more you get specialized, the more money that you can make because not everybody is in that specialization, right? But the only, like, at some point though, as auditors, sorry, if you want to make more money, you become what you call a partner, which are my boss. So that's the path that you can take. If you want to make more money as an auditor, you become part of the business owners of the company. And at that sense, you're going to be making more than 50. You're probably, well, it depends on how much client you're going to serve, but at that point, your salary is varied depending on how many clients you do, right? So yeah, that's the salary. And well, the question is, why did I choose accounting? Well, that was one of the questions that was asked. And we'll simply just click on it. It was all about math. Did I tell you guys that I love math in high school? Right, I love math a lot when I was in high school. And maybe some of you are thinking, well, didn't you just say that accountants are people who doesn't necessarily have to be good in math? Well, nobody told me that when I grew up. Nobody told me that. Everybody was telling me that, oh, you're good in math, you're going to be a great accountant. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to be a great accountant, right? And then my dad was an accountant, so I'm like, it made sense. I'm like, I'm going to be an accountant, right? It was like that. And it was like, that's the reason why I got into accounting, because nobody told me that you didn't have to be good in math to be an accountant, right? So when I eventually got into accounting, if you go to the next slide, one of the things that, no, go back. Yeah. One of the things that I found out was that you didn't have to be good in math. But the reason I stayed in accounting was because I found what I was passionate about. All throughout my school, in high school, I loved math. And that was my only grade, or my only course that I could tell my parents. So if my parents were like, why is your science score so bad? Why is your science score only 60? I'd be like, yeah, but my math is 90. Right? That was my passion. That was there. That was me. That was me. I was like, I love math and I'm going to continue to like it and I'm going to pursue it. I've been blessed by God that I was able to find what I was passionate about, what course I was passionate about in high school, and I was able to be good at it, or at least understand it, right? So when I found out that you didn't need to do a lot of math in accounting, it didn't really bother me that much, because when I went into accounting, I was also blessed because I was also very interested in accounting and I was able to understand it. That's why when I found out about that information and it had nothing to do with math, I was still able to pursue it, right? See, that's the thing that I want to share with you guys, for those who are still looking, is that when you are looking for what job, it's not about what money you make. Find what you're passionate about and pursue it. And that's one of the things that kept me in accounting. And I knew, the thing was, that's how I knew how God put me there. We were talking about that Matthew 6:33 and how that's put God first and all these things will be added unto you. In a way, I knew that that's where God was leading me to. Because I'm like, Lord, so far I've been passing my courses, so there must be a reason why you're putting me into this, right? And when I finished university, there was a part of me where I got lost and I didn't think accounting was for me, because I couldn't get into an accounting job because my grades weren't that good. The recession just kind of hit at that time in 2015. So, I started to doubt a little bit. And one of the things that I didn't do was inquire from God. I just kind of went with my own knowledge. I was seeing all my classmates who were getting into accounting, and they were like geniuses compared to me. They had network. They knew people. I didn't have that high of a grade, and I didn't know the right people, right? Because nowadays it's about who you know, not just what you know. That's quite important. So I didn't have those. And instead of going to God and being like, Lord, What am I going to do now? I just started to apply, and the more I applied, the more I suffered because I didn't get a reply back, and then the pressure kept coming. And it came to a point where I really needed to start to work, right? So, like, you know what? I'm going to try to apply somewhere else. So I stopped applying for accounting at some point, and I started applying for office work, right? Again, I didn't ask God. I didn't ask God, like, Lord, you know what? I don't want to. I just told God, I'm like, Lord, there is no way that I'm a graduate of a university and I'm going to go back to working at Home Depot or Tim Hortons or McDonald's. There's no way. I had that much pride in me. I had that. That's the only thing I told God, and I didn't talk to Him, right? So for those 2 years that, from 2015 to 2017, I was basically, I was like that. And the more I applied, the more I got disappointed because I kept getting letters. Sorry, we chose another candidate. Thank you very much. We will be keeping your file for future references. They never called. Not a single one called back. And I was getting really, really disappointed. And then it came to a point where I didn't know what to do, and that's where Matthew 6:33 came into play. God talked to me one day, and it'd be like, have you not trusted me? Do you not know that I'm like Jeremiah 29:11? Do you not know that? Have you not consulted with me? Did you put me first when you were looking for a job? And I said, okay, Lord, I'm sorry. I didn't do that. I will lay down my pride. Wherever you put me, if I have to go back to Home Depot, I'll go back to Home Depot. If I have to work at McDonald's, I'll work at McDonald's. All right, I'll leave it unto you, Lord. Whatever you will, I'm going to apply everywhere and anywhere. Okay. So I started applying. McDonald's didn't call me back. So I was going to apply for Tim Hortons, but I got a call from Home Depot. I'm like, okay, at least I got an interview at Home Depot. I went to Home Depot, did my interview, I thought everything went well, answered the right questions. They never called me back. I'm like, okay, Lord, I don't know where you want me to go, but I'll just continue applying. And then one day my dad told me, hey, you should apply for Bergeron & Co. They're looking for an accountant. You have to speak French. That's you. And I said, yeah, that's me. Okay, Lord, I'll apply. I applied. I think after a month or so, I get a phone call, youth camp, as I was about to take a shower. And my phone rang, and then the Lord says, that's the accounting firm. I'm like, okay. Picked it up. Hello? Yes? Interview? Yeah? Okay. This date? Okay, thank you. I took a shower. After I took a shower, I said, oh, I didn't even write down the company name. I just wanted to take a shower. But see, the difference is that when I put God first, I didn't have to worry. I didn't have to worry so much. Even when I messed up the phone call, I didn't have to worry. Before that, I would be so happy if someone even called me. I got that phone call and it was like, oh, okay, I'll take my shower, go back to the youth camp. After a week or so, I'm like, oh, I have to start finding who actually called me. And I was too embarrassed to call back the office and say, hey, did you guys call me for an interview? So I didn't. I just assumed that that's where it was. And I went there and it was where I was supposed to be. So when I put God first, that's what happened. And do I have, how many more minutes do I have? I got 5 minutes. Okay, so just to show that when you put God first, He really does give you all these things. When I went for my interview, I was the first, I think, in the morning, and at the end of the day, there were 3 good candidates for the position, 3 good ones, and I was the least favorite. There was one, my coworker right now, he had the most experience. He worked in an accounting firm in Quebec, so he spoke French. There was another person who, somewhat the same but younger, in between me and him. And then there was me. So they chose the older gentleman, my coworker right now, and then they helped find a job for the second person. For me, on the other hand, they really wanted me because they liked how I presented myself, but they didn't have a spot. So they said, okay, well, we'll keep his name on the file. They haven't replied to me yet. On the very same day that I interviewed, that was the decision. And at the end of that day for them, one of the bookkeepers that used to work there went to my boss and says, I'm leaving, I'm quitting the company. It's a bookkeeper. It's not the position I applied for. And that was how God worked. Because I could have been told that, okay, we're keeping your file. But I got an offer. They sent me an offer about a week later saying, hey, we are giving you an offer to be a bookkeeper. I didn't really care at that point. They sent me a job offer, and I just accepted. I said, thank you, I will be there. I'll sign anything. And then he called me, him like, hey, I think it's because I answered too quickly. But he says, do you understand that you're not getting the position that you asked for? And I was like, yeah, it's okay, but at least I'm gonna be in the company. And I know that there's a chance for me to get the position that I applied for, right? So he says, okay, yeah, exactly, that's what it is. So we're gonna keep you for a year in that position, and then we're gonna try to make you fit into the position you want after a year. Just to let you know, it took 3 months. Because in that 1 year that I was working, one of the accountants that were there had to go on maternity leave. 3 months after I started working. And they saw that I was good enough after what they've seen from my work, so I got my accounting position. Right? That happened. Yeah, so all glory to God, because after I graduated, about a year and a half of agony is trying to find my own way. I didn't get anything far. But within in 2017, when I told God, wherever you want to put me, I'll be good as long as where you want me to be. In a couple of months, I got where I wanted to be in. So, thank you for listening to me. That's my presentation. And I hope that you consider accountancy as your... Thank you very much.